I wanted to start by thanking you for making films that pose a worthy challenge to the audience. I think that it's something that struck me about your work since I first started to see it. I wanted to ask, firstly, about the genesis of this project. As I understand it, you started doing research back in 2021, soon after your previous film, Beginnings. Can you talk to us more about that?
Thank you very much. It's a very emotional moment for me to be here now as a director. Yes, this film I started to work. So when I was doing casting for Beginning, I was in the villages casting children for the film, and all the children were usually invited to come in with their mothers. Because I just wanted them to come and spend maybe a few hours with us as a family, so I could get to know them. And soon I started to understand that these women who were just bringing their children to be in a film, they also were coming to say something, they wanted to tell me something at the same time. And when I started to just hang out with them and talk, I understood that the subject of the film was one of the really important one for them. They were all talking about, because most of these women have 6 or 8 children, and they, I would say they're stay-at-home moms, but it's not even the question. They never worked, they never went to universities, they never graduated high schools, and many of them cannot read or write. I mean, it's a huge problem in these villages of education. And I started to think that I needed to go back after Beginning, and I even started to tell producers that I needed to go back. And I already knew that it would be a few years of commitment to this place for the films.
Because research is a substantial part of your process, correct? I believe I read that you write quickly, but you really like to immerse yourself.
Well, yes. Also, I really had this luxury in Georgia, because this is a place where I grew up, and I lived there until I was 17. And I know everybody in the town and in the hospital. And when I went back, it was pandemic, and I went back to this town, and I just went to the hospital, and I asked people there who work there to gradually introduce me to the world which they inhabit. And they really welcomed me. And it took me 1 year to gradually start to become immersed in this world, because it's not immediate that they let you to go and see how a woman gives birth, or they don't let you to go into the surgery room immediately. And I did not want to, actually. I wanted to really observe doctors and to see their lives. And then gradually they started to bring me also to patients. And well, I was also helping, because sometimes a woman would be brought in who was waiting for a child to be delivered, and it was 9 or 8 hours of waiting. So they sometimes just wanted me to sit with them and entertain in a way, and or make coffee or tea. And I was just glad to be there. And little by little, and that was part of the research, because many things, everything which is in a film really happened. I cannot, of course, name people, but literally everything, including the very tragic events. And I was there, actually. So it was never that I imagined a story and then I wrote. It was quite opposite. There was so much happening that I needed to understand what part of it could I handle to be part of the film, because it was a lot of responsibility for me to also to talk about certain things in a film, in this film.
I think something that's always stood out to me in your films is the precision of your visual language, the blocking, the composition of the shots. I find myself often, always thinking, for example, about power dynamics. These things, just in the way that you set people up visually from the opening scenes, this seems to be an ongoing interest and tension in your work, and I think certainly in this film. Can you talk a little bit more about just your visual style?
Yeah. Well, you see, for me, it's like not a visual style, but it's rather a form of like creating, I mean, communicating or like creating this world, which is how I experience it or maybe how I relate to it. Because writing for me is like, it's not a literature, so it's like I write my own script. So maybe I'm a very bad screenwriter, actually, if I decide to write it, for somebody else. But when I do it for myself, like usually I already know, okay, this is how the actors need to be sitting, and this is what's happening, because like space between people means so much, or like emptiness, or like who is on screen, who's off screen. Also, like spoken language for me is part of the soundscape, really. And it's Georgian language means so much. And even like my professors who are here, they know that I never made anything in any other language, even as a student. Like for me, it was so important to work with the language I was born with at the same time, because it has certain melodic nature for me, and I like imperfections of it. Maybe like foreign audiences do not really catch those accents and differences, but I never correct my actors for them to speak correctly, but rather would go for like capturing imperfections also of the spoken language. And all of that is for me like what creates characters and creates the film at the same time, because like who's not on screen and what's not on screen sometimes is more important for me than what it is. But especially in time which we live, like with so many images and like so much like we're surrounded by so many images. I call myself some sort of image junkie, because I look at too much every day and constantly. So maybe distilling like images and bringing to screen something very specific allows me also as a viewer and like of my own film to really process, like, or maybe to really look at what's in front of me on screen.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that you do that for us as we watch. I think that in the way that you set up scenes, you just allow things to sort of sprout as we're watching. I'm thinking especially of the scene in the village after the storm, when she walks into the home and the husband's there. And just for me, speaking for myself, just the cacophony of questions in my head about what is going to happen. What is revealed? What does he know? I'm so interested in the way that you find ways to do this with, to your point about the Georgian language, with few words and a kind of slowed down pace and approach. How do you work with your actors to get them to match the tone that you're going for?
I usually like to listen to my actors, and also like often they disagree with when they read something that I give them. They absolutely disagree and dislike, but it's very welcome usually for me. It's like I like to hear what my actors dislike, because I think that often they're right, and then like when we start to workshop the script, I start to understand that maybe there is too much written or too little. So I really like to involve actors really early in the process and to really develop the characters with them. Because for me, it's important then they really start to embody the character and not act in a way. Because if they really embody the character, then I just really need to create the circumstances and put the camera and then just see what they're going to do, because often many unexpected things start to happen. It seems very planned, and I know that it is, but also like there is so much that actors do. Sometimes just even to show me that they always wanted to do something, like, and they want to try, and like we try many things on set usually, and I don't shoot much. I shoot very few takes because we shoot on film, and in Georgia there is no lab, like there is like no infrastructure for shooting on 35 millimeters. So we shoot in a very economical way, but actors know that if they want to try something, we will always do it. So we work for a very long time, and once again I had this huge luxury in Georgia again, like with actors, because they were just willing to go with me and stay in this place, because there are many non-actors in the film, and the bigger challenge for professional actors usually is to work with people who have never been on screen before. Because how do you balance, like, or what do you expect from the person who has never been on screen before? Because sometimes they might get confused, but I just trust these people. I do believe that when you put somebody in front of the camera, something magical starts to happen, and I really trust the moment also a lot. Yeah.
I think that you trust audiences too. Something that I think you, in all of your work to date, you make it impossible to take women's bodies in particular for granted. And I wanted to ask you about your approach to filming the birth scenes, the abortion scenes. I mean, there are some tough scenes throughout your work. I remember there's a very memorable act of sexual violence in beginning that I think some people didn't know how to look. And I think that question is an important confrontation in your work. How do we look?
It is, and also like how to see actually things, because again, like I think that there are so many images around, like for example, since the war in Ukraine has started, there are like so many telegraph like channels where people watch like just horrible atrocities of war, because they're filmed with the drones, and like I don't know how it's possible, but people do watch it. And I feel that like, what does cinema do in this case? Like, where is cinema as an audiovisual like form of art when life that's filmed around us is so like, impossible to look at? And that in that case, like sometimes I find myself just to really try to narrow down the point of view and maybe show less in a way, because in the abortion scene, what do we really see? That's important to ask this question. And on the same time, like, do we really need to see everything there? Like, I don't. But as for the birth, I wanted to see it because, and we were discussing this a lot also with my cinematographer, that in a way, it's how we are all here. I mean, we were all born at some point, and then like it's so difficult for us to look at it at the same time. So I wanted maybe also to give the audience opportunity to see this very magical moment, or if somebody doesn't want to see it, it's also like I do believe that cinema does not consist only of images which we want to see, and it's okay if people will like look away at some point, and even if they walk out from the screening, because I think that maybe at some point they will remember the film which they abandoned and then say, okay, maybe I want to watch today. Maybe like, yes, I do believe, because I have those moments in life when I'm just not ready to watch something, and then look, I'm not in the mood, and then I go back, because I think that's the opportunity also what cinema gives us. It's just like to kind of like create a space when we go back to something. And I do really trust the audience because to the point that sometimes maybe I'm too romantic in this belief in the audience and the viewer. But so far, I don't know. I think I've been very lucky and like grateful. Like,
we only have a little bit of time left, but I did want to ask about the figure that opens the film that we see throughout the film. I don't want you to explain it to us because that's like a boring thing to ask, but I'm interested in the design, the performance of that figure. It's very particular, and I found myself, to your point about looking and seeing, I found myself looking more closely each time that she reoccurred. Can you tell us about that figure?
Well, I think I was thinking about this when I was in this hospital and I saw just so many things happening. including the death of one woman, which was a very like sharing experience for me, because I knew also everybody who was involved in this. Like what it was like something which really made me question, like, how do you make a film? I mean, how can you deal with making a film when life is what's like just so unbearable? And then I understood that, like, if a character in the film would ever hit this point when it's just unbearable and impossible to handle. And I understood that I witnessed that only once, thankfully. But if the character works in this hospital, then for her, things that she has witnessed has been like just too many, maybe. And I started to think that, did my character ever have an opportunity to get out from this experience of human experience also at the same time, not just the hospital, but being a human even. And maybe like in my previous film, I was also asking this question, and of course, like I find it impossible, and I can't answer it in my films either. But then this figure started to appear for me, which was this like, something which was the process of transformation or departure from the life she knew or the life she had. And then that figure for me also was stuck in some world, which also had no kind of like, no way to get out from there. And it was I don't want to talk about it maybe too much, because I did not want to film how it started to happen. Like, I didn't want to explain anything and to turn it into the genre character or like element.
Well, I could talk about this all day, but that is all the time we have. Thank you so much for this film. Thank you, all of you, for coming to see it, for staying around. Thank you.
Thank you.